I'm you in the future. And you know what? Everything turns out incredibly great for us. You are going to achieve some things that you will not even believe. And yes, you do matter. I wake up, felt great, and the best part was I gained the gift of forgiving my mother and was able to take care of her for the next 20 years. Welcome to Motivational Mondays, Conversations with David Ibarra, and today my guest is Craig Bickmore, who is the director of the New Car Automobile Dealers of Utah. Welcome, Craig.
David, thank you for being here. We've been friends for 35, 37 years. I'm grateful to be here. Thank you.
Well, I tell you what, 35 years, we've gone through a lot together, haven't we?
A few things, for sure. Yes.
For sure. I want to start by talking a little bit about your your beginning with the association. When did you start? I know you've been the president or director of the association for some 28, 30 years, correct?
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Well, tell us about how you started and why you got interested in it.
Well, this is really interesting is that, coming from college, went to Utah State, I got an MBA from there, came here, wanted to be a financial planner, David. You may not have known this.
I didn't.
I worked for an insurance agency before school when I was in college down in Cedar City, grew up in Cedar City, and had a little bit of an insurance background, got an MBA, and then thought, I want to be a financial planner. So I came to Salt Lake from Logan and was teaching crash courses at night and doing some other things with an insurance company to be a, quote, financial planner. And it didn't work out. And a long story short is the place that I was teaching crash courses to pass your insurance license, he had been in the building and then moved across the street from where the association was.
Okay, on Main Street.
On Main Street, 1588 South Main. So he was upstairs, and, the office was down below, and then he moved across the street. Well, the director at the time, a fellow by the name of Press Kearsley, they needed somebody to help with the insurance piece. So he was acquainted with the fellow who taught the insurance school and called and said, hey, do you know of anybody? And he said, well, I know of a guy that's married, he's got 2 kids, and is probably starving to death. So Press calls me on the phone and said, I got your name from Marsh. His name was, last name was Marsh. And so he said, Mr. Marsh. And he said, can I take you and your wife to lunch? And I said, well, sure. I didn't know anything about anything. So I went to lunch and he talked about the association. Here was an insurance need. They had a trust, etc. Well, David, I never called him back. I wasn't interested because I wanted to be a financial planner.
Right.
So 2 weeks later, he calls me back and he said, well, you never called me back. How come? And I said, well, I wasn't interested in the job. Well, 2 weeks now had transpired, and I was really starving to death. That's how I started the association.
So you decided that you needed an instant paycheck.
I needed to have something stable and money coming in because I had 2 little kids and 1 on the way.
Well, oftentimes fate has a hand in a good decision, and thank goodness that was a good decision for you, and it certainly was for the association. Tell me about what are your responsibilities in the association, and how is it that you serve the new car franchise dealers across this state?
Well, thank you for that. So we sold products and different things to help the association sustain itself. Then it moved naturally into the government relations and lobbying arena. In about 1995, they asked me if I would redo the franchise law. It had been done in 79, but it hadn't been really revised since then. So I said, well, sure.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, that was about the time, who was the president of the association, meaning the chairman, the dealer that was in charge at that time? Was it Mike Day of Henry Day Ford?
It was when I took over as a director. I think Mike was the president. Alan Archibald was kind of there in that board. Robert Garf in 79 he was the Speaker of the House, but I don't know at that point. he had done the first franchise bill. And so this rewrite, yes, it was about the same time, David.
Well, I can remember that became your appointment to director became Mike Day's major initiative because he shared that with me during the year that he served. He felt like we needed some new energy, and you were young and full of energy and had done a great job up on the Hill with the legislature. And many people in the audience don't know all the regulations and all the things that come at every business, and it's a matter of having a balance, and you were able to achieve that through your work at the legislature to ensure that automobile dealers and the general public were both treated fairly.
You're exactly right, and that is correct. Mike was very instrumental with that, and that was a Herculean effort. Everybody got involved. I didn't go to school to be a lobbyist. I was a business guy, but I learned some things that it was like a fire hose drinking out of a fire hydrant. But that really went well. And since that time, as you know, David, we have subsequently amended, changed, shifted that franchise law and other motor vehicle laws and rules in the last 30 years that have really kept that balance between the manufacturer and the franchisee, because that relationship is, it needs to be balanced. Yeah, it's hard sometimes.
And for some that don't know what it is, just simply put, let me take a stab at this. We have small businesses across this state that have invested their entire earnings and savings into building facilities and representing the manufacturers from, General Motors to Nissan to Hyundai and on and on and on. And the protection is if they build these massive dealerships and invest, that they ought to have a say in the interaction between the sale of a car and be protected with their investment that they've made in that manufacturer.
David, you're correct. That backstop being the legislature, that's so key because, you have these international, multi-billion-dollar manufacturing entities.
Yeah.
The car dealers are no match for that. And so it has to be a level playing field. Otherwise, it gets tipped over, and then you see all of the investment, the human capital, the team members, the customers. We've had plenty of examples over the years, David.
Certainly.
You and I both know them, where obviously, in my opinion, in my experience, the best place to buy a vehicle is a new car dealer because they're invested in the community. They're invested in all kinds of ways. They're going to do their best to take care of the customer.
And there are laws on the books, plenty of them, to protect folks from somebody who might get in the representation of an automobile dealer that may not be doing the right things. Those are easily weeded out and handled as any would be in any industry in America.
Correct. Commerce does a great job at that, consumer protection. And so, there are plenty of laws, but ours are specific to that manufacturer-dealer relationship.
Well, I wanted to have this program every Monday because in our country we're having dialogue that isn't positive, it's negative. And I tell you what, I want to chant every morning, out with the negative, in with the positive. Tell me some things that you're proud of in your association with automobile dealers across the state of Utah that just put a smile on your face in the things they do for the communities in which they serve.
Well, I'll tell you, there's so many, and I know these people very well. I know them. I know their spouses. I know their kids. In some cases, certainly their grandkids. What they do that people don't know is really that makes me the most happy, because it's those quiet acts of service that we don't know that happens, and I know those happen all along. Keep in mind that these enterprises are multi-tens of millions of dollars. They have employees who are valued. They have families. They play in sports. They have the arts. Some have scholarships to universities and different things. The community give back from these dealers is phenomenal. And I don't know, one, they don't necessarily want people to know. One time years ago, I would mention this person's name. He's now deceased, but he and I were in a meeting and were actually on the phone, and I called him because he had made a contribution to an at-risk school. Mm-hmm. And I said to him, I was going to a meeting with this group that was helping with the school, and I said to him, thank you for your donation. And immediately over the phone, he said, who told you that?
Yeah.
Well, I was going to the meeting where we're going to talk about it, and I knew that he had donated. He didn't want anybody to know. Those are the kind of people.
Well, when we look at the Larry Miller Automotive Group and just in their work in securing the Utah Jazz to be able to stay here, when they did not have the money to invest in the Utah Jazz, and they gambled, and it was very important to Larry and Gail to keep it here. But when you look at different automobile dealers that came together to help an at-risk elementary school here in Salt Lake City, and the amount of funds that went to improvement in the facility itself and equipment were beyond. When you look at one automobile dealer that there was a transition house of when children had been battered and disgusting things that they have to be held for a week or two until they found a foster care family for them to take. And I knew one automobile dealer, I happen to know him well, his name was Mike Day, that went and bought a facility, built a facility, and made it his number one thing. And we've got automobile dealers all over the state of Utah that have their number one thing that they contribute to. And I'll tell you, now I'm doing the interview. I should let you tell, but I wanted to share with this audience just how giving this community to the community that our automobile dealers are. It no longer surprises me. It no longer surprises me.
Well, David, let me tell you that person on the phone didn't want to know was indeed Larry Miller.
Yeah.
And that project was Edison Elementary. That was about 16th West and 4th South. Mm-hmm. And Mike Day was heavily involved. Larry was involved. Garfs were involved. That time that
and if I'm not mistaken, John
Meekin was involved.
John Meekin was involved as well.
Yeah, there was a lot of people involved. Sahara, I mean, the list goes on. The Catholic Community Services, the LDS Church, the Episcopal Church. I mean, this project took 3 years, and this was just a sampling, David, that you and I are both involved in. It shows to the goodness of this group.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. Tell me, of the 35 years that you've been serving as in the association representing new car franchise automobile dealers, what has been the 2 or 3 things that have been most gratifying for you?
Oh, let's see. Boy, there's a lot. I think the government relations and legislative efforts to enhance the relationship between the dealers and keeping that operation in business. That's not easy. Mm-hmm. It's hard. And the goodness of the people in government and the goodness of the people in the legislature. And, we're all going to differ politically on different items. But when we have something like that, people come together. That's one. Another piece equally as important is the outreach of what I've seen these dealers, for example, years ago, there was an initiative to put into special needs schools, et cetera, what we call pumper cars. Mm-hmm. And the goal was to get some of the little pumper cars for these at-risk kids, special needs kids, so they have some mobility and training. Right. And I know one dealer up in Cache Valley, happens to be a senator, was responsible for putting one in every school. If I'm not mistaken. And that is from St. George to Logan.
And that
many
state senator is whom now?
Chris Wilson.
Chris Wilson. What a champion of
awesome.
The community.
Mm-hmm.
He makes politics look like there's some common sense in it. brings that back to the dialogue, and what a wonderful leader he is.
So that was the second one, and it just I'm biased, right? Because these folks are my friends.
Mm-hmm.
They are just great people. Their hearts are in the right place. I don't know, and you think, oh, well, you work for them. Of course, you're going to say that. No, I don't have to say anything. They are some of the best people on the planet, truly on the planet. What is it? Let me give you one example. A dealer, won't mention who it is, a couple of years ago had a heart attack. I had called him in the morning, left a message. Later that morning, I get a call from his wife, and she's in tears. And I said, her first name, how are you? What can I do? What can I help you with? She says, my husband is in an ambulance in front of me, has just had a heart attack, and I'm following the ambulance to the hospital. I said, why are you calling me? Here's what she said. My husband said you called him that morning, and I needed to call you back.
Wow.
What would I wouldn't do for that person?
Certainly.
Or anybody like that. That's the kind of people I work for, David, and you work with and work for.
Well,
they're wonderful.
I tell you, I've been involved in this business about the same time as you. It happens to be 35 years. And people ask me all the time, David, are you going to retire? Heavens, no. It took me a long time to gain the wisdom and skills to serve the automobile dealers that I do. And I have no thought. I'm having fun every day. Now, that's my story about retirement. What's yours?
So I have a few more. I love what I do, but I realize that, there's that next generation, and it just so happens my son has been with us almost 20 years and is doing a great job legislatively and other things, and he'll take my spot. And so, when the time's to come that I won't be at the association, I have a particular passion. We'll probably talk about it a little bit. I love the car business. I love the car dealers. I love this industry. But for over 30 years, I've had a passion of hypnotherapy. You think, really, that's really interesting. A good friend and I got into this 30 years ago. He said to me, Craig, I'm into this. You got to kind of work on this. So he and I went through hundreds and hundreds of hours. I spent money I never had.
Yes.
And we went through hypnotherapy training. And so when I leave the association, I'll probably spend more time helping people with hypnotherapy. And I found that it's really cool.
Take a moment and picture in your mind igniting your child's journey to lifelong success from an early age. With Yes, Our Kids Can, this vision becomes a reality right from preschool. Don't miss this chance to shape your child's path towards extraordinary success. Enroll in the Yes, Our Kids Can University now and witness the remarkable impact it can have on your child's growth and development. Secure your child's bright future today. It's interesting. That was my bridge, by the way, to get to the next phase of who you are and the services that you give. But I can remember back when you used the facility, the automobile dealership that I was general manager of, Henry Day Ford, to do one of your first seminars. Now, you won't realize I was in that seminar listening, of course, and the work that you did was really transformative. And I work with a lot of folks, and as you know, I've written a new book called Live Ready, Beyond Thinking, Grow Rich, and I spent a lot of time talking about thought and how we as human beings can, if we choose to learn how, can manage our thought. and understand the subconscious, the conscious, our imagination, and how they work together with the reticular activation system that prevents or would encourage information to flow into your subconscious to make it so. There is more than 50% of the time that I can't help someone because they have a block. And when you have a block, you freeze. You are absolutely involved in trying to overcome fear. Tell us a little bit about what is a block.
Well, it comes down to a set of basics, is that this has been my experience for over 30 years. Actually, I just renewed my certification, 32 years. And so I've seen over that period of time, with only 2 exceptions, David, and I'm going to say in generalities, between 0 and age 9, that is the most critical time in the human being's life. Because you think about it, I have 16 grandkids. The oldest is 9, the youngest is, 8 months.
Yeah.
They're so innocent and so impressionable. And so they take things from an authority person or a situation, or maybe it's just a thought or something, whatever, and that becomes their definitive thought process on X, Y, or Z. And once it becomes part of their belief system, even if it's incorrect, that's what I deal with. It's not correct belief systems. You don't have to change them.
And that's the block.
That's the block. If it becomes incorrect, and then you think about it. So if you have a belief and it's yours, you're going to justify and defend that belief with everything you have because that's your belief. If it happens to be incorrect and doesn't square, it's like gravity. I use this example. You can't fall up. That's a principle. You can't. The sun comes up from the east, it sets in the west. Just because you think it's the opposite doesn't mean it's going to work, because it's not. So you're going to justify and defend that belief because it's yours, and because you had it at a young age and it took root there, that's your reality. And until you go back, you can't change history, but you can change your reaction to that history. You can't forget things. That's a misnomer. Oh, let's just hypnotize you, forget. No, that's TV-ish. But if you can go back, look at that circumstance live with an adult perspective and see that moment when that belief first became part of you and make a new decision, it's geometrical to change, because now you shift an incorrect belief to a correct belief. Right. Then all that energy that was spent holding on to it, defending it, making it true for you, releases and now gravitates to the new belief. It surrounds it, and it makes the new correct belief a reality.
You're pushing it away. But I went to your seminar. I don't know if I ever told you this. So I've come home and I thought to myself, I know that I've got a couple of blocks because something will maybe give me a reaction that's uncomfortable. And being raised in Utah foster care for the first 14 years of my life, and not understanding, hey, do you matter? Why does a mom give away their kids? And then the reaction you take from other kids is embarrassing, and it's hurtful, and you get embarrassed. Well, during your seminar, you said, hey, you got to go to a quiet place and turn out the lights, and you just go back as far as you can. And I'm sitting in the back of the room listening to you talk. So I go into my room, I shut off all the lights, it's quiet, and I go back as far as I can to the earliest memory I have about what caused me to believe maybe I didn't matter as much as someone else. And then I saw 2 women bending over, giving me a gift, handing me the gift. I didn't know who they were, Greg. And I was about 2 years old.
Oh, my.
And then she went to say goodbye, and she hugged me too tightly. And I said, what? And she had red lipstick and smelled of cigarette smoke. And it confused me. That moment I knew, that's your mother. So then I walk in, me, the adult, stop this frame. And I looked down to that little guy and I said, hey, David, I'm you in the future. And you know what? Everything turns out incredibly great for us. You are going to achieve some things that you will not even believe. And yes, you do matter. I wake up, felt great. And the best part was I gained the gift of forgiving my mother and was able to take care of her for the next 20 years. Now she's in a rest home, but the stuff that you taught, you may not even. I don't think I ever shared that with me. I said, heck, I'm going to go try it. What do I got to lose? And it was a great release. Everybody matters, and everybody is special in their own special way.
No question.
We got to help people find it, undo the block that is caused normally in the very beginning of their lives, that makes them believe something that is incorrect.
David, you've hit the nail on the head, and I will tell you, in my experience, it's very difficult for somebody to do that on their own, because you have to be at the right place, intensely focused on what that is, be able to take all the distractions away and focus. So kudos for you to be able to do that. And you're correct. That's the process. And I get a little selfish in that, I do this in the evenings, most of the time for not any money. And my wife says, Craig, that was a 2-hour session. We never end a session until we're done.
Right.
It's gone 2 hours and a half before. But what happens in those things is just like happened to you. There is a mind shot that goes, woo, and an emotion release and a realization that I do matter. And regardless of what happened to me or whatever the happening that went on or the thought process, it clears it out and it forms a channel, and the emotional release is stunning. What happens is, David, there's a void that's created. Nature abhors a vacuum. You take the old belief, you move it out like you did, you replace it with something true and correct, and that forms who you now, the new person is, and you are the fulfillment of that. Well, So selfishly, I get an opportunity to do that with people who I don't get the cases who have been other places and can't for some reason get through. We if people want, we get through. And the emotional release and the clarity that comes to them is stunning. And what's really cool, I'm not just saying we're friends. For you to be able to have done that yourself, pretty awesome. That doesn't happen very often. So good on you.
Well, I've spent a lot of time working.
It doesn't come easy, I'm sure.
So when I began to listen to your work, it really was in harmony with Dr. Napoleon Hill's work and Dr. Jose Calzada, who is a physician that works with terminally ill folks. And right away he says, I can't help you if you can't help yourself and then he talks to him about how the mind works and how you've got to react to fear and pivot to positive so your immune system can assist me in helping you, is what he'll say. But I think this is a good place to end our conversations, but I do want you to mention you wrote a book.
So thank you for that. It was called Spiritual Mind Management. A good friend of mine who went through all the hypnotherapy, Dennis Parker, passed away 3.5 years ago, pancreatic cancer.
Right.
He wrote most of it. I have chapters about 4, 5, and 6, just stories of just personal things, people that I'd work with, and I just reflected in my mind. You can see my eyes moving. I'm going into my head to go to my memory. Just some great principles in that book that help people move forward because we need to be free.
I am absolutely positive that the work that you had there has definitely helped you in the work that you do presently with the association.
100%.
And every interaction that you have with every leader at the legislature and every relationship you have, it has helped make you who you are. Well, in
been good,
closing,
thank you.
I want to give you a gift, and this is my new book, Live Ready, Beyond Think and Grow Rich. And this is me as a disciple of Dr. Hill's work of redoing it in a modern version and doing the principles in a different order, in an order that I believe they should have been. And somebody said, how can you dare go against Dr. Hill? And I said, Dr. Hill encouraged us to improve it, to use it, and to continue to make these principles of success useful. So thank you very much for being on our program today. And
Thank you.
Thank you for your friendship.
Absolutely, David. Thank you.
Cool.
Glad to be here.